#assassin sent for a Navy SEAL. Part 1. The rain hammered against the cabin windows like bullets from heaven, creating a symphony of violence that Marcus Chun had grown accustomed to during his years in the service. He sat in his leather chair, nursing a glass of bourbon and staring at the fire crackling in the stone hearth. 3 months had passed since his discharge from the Navy SEALs. 3 months of trying to forget the things he had seen and done in the furthest reaches of space. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition 5 years ago, and humanity's warriors had quickly earned a reputation that made even the most battle-hardened alien species nervous. The SEALs had been among the first to venture into interstellar conflicts, and Marcus had led more than his share of missions that officially never happened. The bourbon burned as it went down, but it was nothing compared to the fire that had consumed the Kepler station when the Zephyrian rebels had tried to use human civilians as shields. Marcus closed his eyes, but the screams still echoed in his memory. Command had told him to stand down, but Marcus Chun had never been good at following orders when innocent lives were at stake. A soft vibration from a security system pulled him from his thoughts. The perimeter sensors had detected movement, multiple contacts approaching from 3 different directions. Marcus set down his glass and moved to the tactical display built into his coffee table. 6 heat signatures showed on the screen, moving with professional precision through the forest surrounding his property. Marcus smiled grimly. After 3 months of peaceful retirement, it seemed his past had finally caught up with him. He recognized the movement patterns immediately. Zephyrian death squads moved in groups of 6, each member specialized for a specific role. They had found him despite the new identity, the remote location, and the careful measures he had taken to disappear. The Zephyrians were a proud warrior race, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that could shift colors like a chameleon. Their military doctrine emphasized honor and revenge, 2 concepts that apparently extended to hunting down retired Navy SEALs who had interfered with their operations. Marcus had killed 17 of their warriors during the Kepler incident and saved over 200 human civilians. To the Zephyrians, this was an insult that demanded blood payment. Moving with practiced efficiency, Marcus activated his home defense systems and began preparing for war. The cabin looked like a simple retirement retreat from the outside, but Marcus had spent the last 3 months turning it into a fortress. Hidden weapon caches, reinforced walls, and enough surveillance equipment to monitor a small city. Old habits died hard for former special operations personnel. The first assassin made his move at exactly midnight, approaching for the eastern tree line with a fluid grace typical of Zephyrian warriors. Through his thermal scope, Marcus watched the alien skin shift from forest green to perfect black, making him nearly invisible against the night sky. The Zephyrian carried traditional plasma weapons in 2 of his 4 hands, while the other 2 gripped climbing claws designed for scaling walls. Marcus waited until the assassin was halfway across the open ground before activating the first surprise. High-intensity floodlights erupted from hidden positions around the property, turning night into blazing day and disrupting the Zephyrian's camouflage. The alien warrior stumbled, his skin cycling rapidly through different colors as his natural camouflage system struggled to adapt. The first shot came from Marcus's modified rail rifle, a weapon designed specifically for penetrating Zephyrian battle armor. The electromagnetic pulse sent a tungsten spike through the assassin's chest at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. The warrior dropped without even understanding what had killed him, his 4 arms still twitching as electrical systems in his equipment sparked and failed. The remaining 5 assassins immediately shifted to combat formation, their hunt turning into a siege. Marcus could hear their battle cries echoing through the forest, a sound like metal grinding against stone that had given human soldiers nightmares on a dozen different worlds. But Marcus Chun was not most soldiers, and this was not most battlefields. The second and third assassins tried a frontal assault, using their natural agility to leap from tree to tree before dropping onto the cabin roof. Marcus had anticipated this tactic and rigged the entire structure with pressure sensors. As soon as their feet touched the metal roofing, shaped charges detonated beneath them, launching both warriors into the air like ragdolls. One landed in the fire pit, screaming as flames consumed his organic armor. The other crashed through the front window and found himself staring down the barrel of Marcus's sidearm. "You came a long way to die," Marcus said in fluent Zephyrian, a language he had mastered during his years fighting their kind. The assassin's 4 eyes widened in surprise before Marcus pulled the trigger twice, ending the conversation permanently. The custom ammunition contained microscopic nanobots designed to shut down Zephyrian nervous systems, ensuring that even a wounded enemy stayed down. The remaining 3 warriors regrouped at the forest edge, their tactical situation deteriorating rapidly. They had expected to find a retired human soldier, probably soft from months of civilian life, and unprepared for professional killers. Instead, they had walked into a carefully prepared kill zone operated by someone who knew their species better than they knew themselves. Marcus used the brief lull to check his ammunition and scan for additional threats. The Zephyrian military doctrine never sent just one squad on important missions, and killing a Navy SEAL would definitely qualify as important. He activated long-range sensors and immediately detected another heat signature moving through the forest, a 4th squad, approaching from the north to cut off any escape routes. The original 3 assassins were preparing for a final coordinated assault when Marcus decided to take the initiative. He slipped out the back of the cabin, moving through shadows with the silent precision that had made him legendary among special operations communities. The Zephyrians were skilled hunters, but they had learned their trade in formal military academies. Marcus had learned his in the mud and blood of actual battlefields. He reached the first warrior's position just as the alien was preparing to throw a plasma grenade at the cabin. Marcus's combat knife, forged from alien metals and sharpened to a molecular edge, slid between the Zephyrian's ribs and found his primary heart. The warrior collapsed silently, for arms going limp as his brain realized that his body was no longer receiving blood. The 5th assassin died even more quietly, Marcus's hands breaking the alien's neck with a practiced twist that severed the spinal column completely. The Zephyrians were strong and resilient, but their anatomy followed predictable patterns that Marcus had studied extensively during his military service. Only one assassin remained from the original squad, and Marcus could hear the warrior calling for backup in the rapid clicking language that Zephyrians use for tactical communications. The 2nd squad was closing in, but Marcus had one more surprise prepared for his uninvited guests. As the final assassin emerged from cover, Marcus triggered the last of his defensive systems. Concealed speakers throughout the forest began broadcasting the mating calls of Terran hunting spiders, creatures that Zephyrians feared on an instinctual level due to their similarity to a predator species from the alien homeworld. The psychological warfare worked perfectly, causing the assassin to freeze in terror just long enough for Marcus to line up his shot. The tungsten spike took the warrior's head clean off, sending it spinning into the darkness while his body collapsed like a marionette with severed strings. 6 professional killers had entered Marcus's property with orders to bring back his head as proof of their success. Now they were all dead, and their backup was about to learn why humanity had earned such a fearsome reputation among the galaxy's warrior races. Marcus gathered the bodies with efficient professionalism, loading them into his truck along with their weapons and equipment. The Zephyrians had wanted to send a message by killing him. Now Marcus was going to send a message of his own, written in the blood of their finest warriors and delivered directly to whoever had ordered his assassination. The 2nd squad was still approaching through the forest, unaware that their mission had already failed catastrophically. Marcus started his truck and drove toward them, ready to add 6 more bodies to his collection. After 3 months of retirement, it felt good to be back in the business of protecting humanity from those who would do harm. #assassin sent for a Navy SEAL. Part 2, the 2nd Zephyrian squad moved through the forest with the confidence of predators who believed they held every advantage. Their leader, war singer Thraxol, was a veteran of 30 campaigns and had personally executed 12 human soldiers during the border conflicts. He carried the traditional weapons of his rank, a plasma cannon capable of melting through tank armor, and ceremonial bone knives carved from the ribs of defeated enemies. Thraxol had been monitoring the tactical communications of the 1st squad when their signals had abruptly ceased. This did not concern him greatly, as Zephyrian warriors often observed communication silence during the final stages of an assassination. The target was merely a retired human soldier, probably drunk and unprepared for a real fight. The warsinger expected to find 6 victorious warriors standing over Marcus Chen's corpse. Instead, he found tire tracks leading away from a cabin that reeked of death and explosive residue. Marcus had disabled the squad's vehicles with thermite charges, melting their engines into useless slag and stranding them in the wilderness. He wanted them to understand exactly how helpless their situation had become before he began the real work. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as he drove slowly along the forest road, giving the aliens time to see him coming. Thraxol raised his plasma cannon and fired at the approaching vehicle, but Marcus had anticipated this response. The truck's armor plating, salvaged from a decommissioned military transport, absorbed the energy blast with minimal damage. Return fire came from the truck's mounted weapons system, a modified chain gun that fired depleted uranium rounds at a rate of 3,000 per minute. The first Zephyrian warrior died before he could take cover, his body literally torn apart by the sustained burst of armor-piercing ammunition. The others scattered into the forest, their tactical formation collapsing under the unexpected volume of fire. Marcus stopped the truck and stepped out, his enhanced combat suit automatically adjusting to the terrain conditions. The suit was another souvenir from his military service, a prototype designed specifically for operations against alien opponents. It enhanced his strength, speed, and reflexes while providing comprehensive protection against energy weapons. More importantly, it contained detailed files on Zephyrian anatomy, tactical doctrine, and psychological weaknesses. Thraxol attempted to rally his remaining warriors with a traditional battle cry, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. The human should have been dead already, overwhelmed by superior numbers and firepower. Instead, 5 of his finest warriors had been eliminated without inflicting any apparent damage on their target. This was not how battles were supposed to proceed, according to everything he had learned in the military academies. Marcus moved through the forest like a ghost, using every trick learned during decades of special operations. The Zephyrians were skilled fighters, but they relied heavily on their natural advantages, superior strength, forearm coordination, and chameleon-like camouflage. Marcus had faced their kind in dozens of engagements and knew exactly how to neutralize those advantages. The second warrior died when Marcus triggered a deadfall trap, dropping a 1,000-pound log directly onto the alien's position. Zephyrians were incredibly strong, but even they could not survive having their spine crushed by a tree trunk moving at terminal velocity. The warrior's camouflage skin flickered through a rainbow of colors before settling into the gray pallor of death. The third alien tried to use his plasma rifle to flush Marcus out of cover, but the human had already moved to a new position. Marcus's return shot came from an impossible angle, the bullet ricocheting off 3 different trees before punching through the warrior's skull. It was a trick shot that required perfect understanding of ballistics, forest acoustics, and alien anatomy, the kind of shot that only became possible after years of fighting the same enemy. Thraxol was beginning to understand why human soldiers had such a fearsome reputation throughout the galaxy. They did not fight like civilized warriors, following established rules and tactical doctrines. Humans fought like the primitive predators they had evolved from, using every dirty trick and underhanded tactic that occurred to their twisted minds. They turned warfare into an art form of creative violence. The Warsinger's remaining 2 warriors were professionals with decades of experience, but they had never faced anything like Marcus Chun. The human seemed to anticipate their moves before they made them, positioning himself perfectly to exploit their weaknesses while remaining invulnerable to their strengths. It was like fighting someone who had written the manual on killing Zephyrians. The 4th warrior attempted to use his natural agility to reach high ground, leaping between tree branches with the fluid grace of his species. Marcus shot him out of the air with a tranquilizer dart loaded with a paralytic agent specifically designed for Zephyrian physiology. The alien crashed to the ground, fully conscious but unable to move any of his 4 limbs. Marcus approached slowly, allowing the warrior to see his death coming. "Your Warsinger sent 12 warriors to kill 1 retired human," Marcus said in perfect Zephyrian, his accent carrying the formal tones of military training. This shows either supreme confidence or terminal stupidity. Which do you think it was? The paralyzed warrior could only move his eyes, but the terror in them spoke volumes. Marcus drew his sidearm and ended the alien's suffering with a single shot to the head. He had learned long ago that mercy was often more cruel than a quick death, especially when dealing with proud warrior cultures. Thrak-Zul and his final subordinate had taken cover behind a massive boulder, using its bulk to shield them from Marcus's rifle fire. The Warsinger was frantically trying to contact his command ship, requesting immediate extraction for his remaining forces. The response he received made his blood run cold with fury and disbelief. High Command was refusing extraction. The mission was considered too important to abort, regardless of casualties. Thrak-Zul and his remaining warrior were ordered to complete the assassination or die in the attempt. There would be no reinforcements, no rescue, and no retreat. They had been abandoned by their own people to face a human killer who had already butchered 10 of their finest warriors. Marcus heard the alien's frustrated roar echoing through the forest and smiled grimly. He had been monitoring Zephyrian communication frequencies throughout the engagement, listening to their tactical discussions and command updates. The aliens' military doctrine emphasized honor and glory, but it also included provisions for abandoning units that failed to achieve their objectives quickly enough. The final subordinate warrior broke first, charging from cover in a desperate attempt to close with Marcus and engage in hand-to-hand combat. It was a brave but futile gesture, as Marcus had positioned himself in a location that provided clear fields of fire in all directions. The Zephyrian made it exactly 17 steps before a railgun spike removed his head from his shoulders. Now only Warsinger Thrak-Zul remained, a veteran commander reduced to cowering behind a rock, while his entire unit lay dead around him. Marcus could have finished him from a distance, but he wanted this one alive. The Warsinger would serve as his messenger, carrying word back to whoever had ordered this assassination attempt. "Come out, Thrak-Zul," Marcus called in the alien's native language. "Your warriors are dead, your transport is destroyed, and your commanders have abandoned you. But I offer you something they did not, a chance to live long enough to deliver a message." The Warsinger's response came in the form of plasma cannon fire that melted the tree Marcus had been standing behind moments earlier. The alien was not interested in surrender or negotiation, preferring to die fighting rather than face the shame of defeat. It was exactly the response Marcus had expected from a Zephyrian officer. Marcus flanked the boulder using a route that took him through a creek bed, approaching from the Warsinger's blind spot. The alien's four-arm physiology gave him superior firepower and coordination, but it also created predictable patterns in his defensive positioning. Marcus had studied those patterns extensively during his military service. The tranquilizer dart struck Thrak-Zul in the neck, delivering enough paralytic agent to drop a full-grown Zephyrian warrior within seconds. The Warsinger toppled backward, his plasma cannon falling from nerveless hands as the human's drugs coursed through his system. He remained conscious, but completely helpless as Marcus approached. "You and your dead warriors are going home," Marcus said, securing the paralyzed alien with restraints designed specifically for Zephyrian physiology. "But not as heroes returning from a successful mission. You're going back as a warning to whoever sent you." Marcus loaded all 12 bodies into his truck, along with their weapons, equipment, and the barely conscious Warsinger. The vehicle's cargo capacity was strained to its limits, but military-grade suspensions were designed to handle extreme loads. He had a long journey ahead of him, and his passengers would not be getting any more comfortable during the trip. The Zephyrian command ship was positioned just outside Earth's solar system, maintaining what they believed was a safe distance from human space defense networks. They had no idea that Marcus Chun was already en route to deliver their warriors back to them personally, along with a message written in blood and terror. #assassin sent for a Navy SEAL. Part 3. The journey to the Zephyrian command ship required Marcus to acquire transportation capable of interstellar travel, which meant visiting one of the black market spaceports that had sprung up around Earth's major cities since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition. Port Alexandria, hidden beneath the Egyptian desert, catered to smugglers, mercenaries, and anyone else who needed to move through space without attracting official attention. Marcus drove his cargo truck through the port's scanner array, which registered 12 Zephyrian life signs and several thousand pounds of military equipment. The automated systems flagged his shipment as potentially dangerous, but A few thousand credits transferred to the right accounts quickly resolved any concerns the port authorities might have had. In the gray economy of interstellar trade, few questions were asked as long as the appropriate fees were paid. Warsinger Thraxall had regained consciousness during the journey, though the paralytic drugs still prevented him from moving anything except his eyes and mouth. Marcus had positioned him in the passenger seat, forcing the alien to watch as human civilization passed by the windows. The Warsinger's pride demanded that he maintain dignity in the face of capture, but his eyes betrayed growing fear as he began to understand the scope of Marcus's plan. "You cannot simply fly to a Zephyrian warship," Thraxall said, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. "My people will destroy you before you could deliver whatever message you think you carry." Marcus smiled as he guided the truck toward a modified cargo freighter, its hull scarred by countless journeys through the lawless sectors of the galaxy. "Your people have been trying to destroy me for 3 months. How has that been working out?" The freighter's captain was a grizzled Terran veteran named Rodriguez who had served 2 tours with the Colonial Marines before transitioning to the more profitable world of independent shipping. He recognized Marcus immediately, having fought alongside Navy SEALs during the Rigel campaign. No questions were asked about the cargo or the destination. Professional courtesy among warriors transcended species boundaries. "You sure about this, Chun?" Rodriguez asked as his crew loaded the Zephyrian bodies into the freighter's cargo bay. "Taking on a whole battle group with just a transport ship seems like suicide, even for someone with your reputation." Marcus checked his weapons one final time, ensuring that every system was functioning perfectly. "I'm not taking on a battle group, Captain. I'm making a delivery." The journey through hyperspace took 18 hours, during which Marcus prepared for the most dangerous phase of his mission. The Zephyrian command ship would be surrounded by escort vessels, all of them armed and ready to fire on any unauthorized approach. Marcus needed to get close enough to deliver his message without being vaporized by defensive systems designed to stop entire fleets. Warsinger Thraxall spent the journey attempting to understand human psychology, trying to find some leverage that might save his life. He offered Marcus wealth, power, even the location of Zephyrian military installations that could be sold to human intelligence agencies. Each offer was politely declined, leaving the alien increasingly desperate and confused. "What do you want from me?" Thraxall finally asked, his voice breaking with frustration. What could possibly be worth this insane risk? Marcus turned from a navigation console, where he had been plotting their approach vector. "I want your superiors to understand something very important about humans. We don't forget, we don't forgive, and we don't stop. You sent assassins to kill a retired soldier who just wanted to drink bourbon and watch his fire. Now you get to explain to your war council why that was the worst mistake in Zephyrian military history." The freighter dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, exactly where Marcus had calculated the Zephyrian fleet would be positioned. 3 heavy cruisers and a battleship hung in the void, their weapons trained on the small human vessel that had appeared without warning. Warning broadcasts in multiple languages demanded immediate surrender and prepare to fire. Marcus activated the emergency communication array and transmitted on all Zephyrian military frequencies. "This is Marcus Chun, United Earth Navy SEALs, retired. I have Warsinger Thraxall and 11 other Zephyrian warriors aboard my vessel. I am requesting permission to return your property." The response came after several minutes of frantic communication between the alien ships. Supreme War Leader Kethvar himself appeared on the main screen, his 4 eyes burning with fury and disbelief. The Supreme War Leader was a legend among Zephyrian military forces, having commanded successful campaigns against 6 different species. He was not accustomed to having humans appear uninvited in his command space. "Human warrior," Kethvar said, his voice carrying the formal tones of high military rank. "You will surrender your vessel for boarding and submit to interrogation regarding the fate of my warriors." Marcus laughed, a sound that made even the paralyzed Thraxall flinch with its cold humor. "Supreme War Leader, I think there's been a misunderstanding about our respective positions. You sent 12 assassins to kill me in my sleep. I killed 11 of them and brought them back to you as a courtesy. Warsinger Thraxall can provide you with a detailed report on exactly how that went." The Supreme War Leader's skin shifted from ceremonial gold to the deep red that indicated barely controlled rage. No human had ever dared to speak to him with such casual disrespect, and the implication that his finest warriors had been slaughtered by a single opponent was almost beyond belief. Yet the evidence floated before him in the form of a small freighter that somehow contained members of his personal guard. "You will dock with our ship immediately and present yourself for judgment," Kethvar commanded. "Your crimes against the Zephyrian Empire demand blood payment." Marcus began activating the freighter's cargo bay systems, preparing to eject his passengers into the void. "I'm not coming aboard your ship, Supreme War Leader. I'm simply returning your warriors and delivering a message. What you do after that is entirely up to you." The first cargo container launched from the freighter bay, tumbling slowly toward the Zephyrian battleship. Internal scanners confirmed that it contained the bodies of 2 warriors, along with their weapons and equipment. Each corpse showed evidence of precise, professional violence, the kind of killing that could only be accomplished by someone with intimate knowledge of Zephyrian anatomy and tactics. 5 more containers followed, each one containing evidence of the complete failure of what should have been a simple assassination mission. The Zephyrian recovery teams worked in stunned silence as they retrieved bodies and equipment, trying to understand how 12 of their finest warriors had been eliminated by a single human opponent. Warsinger Thraxol was ejected in the final container, still paralyzed, but conscious enough to provide his superiors with a first-hand account of the disaster. His testimony would carry significant weight, as he was known for his honesty and tactical competence. The Supreme War Leader would have no choice but to accept the humiliating truth. "Your message has been delivered," Kethvar said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Now face the consequences of your actions like a true warrior." The Zephyrian fleet began moving into attack formation, their weapons charging for a concentrated barrage that would reduce the human freighter to constituent atoms. Marcus watched their preparations with professional interest, noting the precision of their movements and the devastating firepower they could bring to bear. Under normal circumstances, a single cargo ship would have no chance against such overwhelming force. Marcus activated the freighter's final surprise, a piece of technology he had liberated from a classified research facility during his last official mission. The experimental stealth system enveloped the ship in a field that rendered it effectively invisible to most sensor arrays, while simultaneously creating dozens of false targets throughout the local space. The Zephyrian fleet found itself firing at ghosts while the real freighter slipped away undetected. Their sophisticated targeting systems registered confirmed hits on multiple vessels, but the explosions revealed only empty space where enemy ships should have been. Marcus Chun had vanished like a phantom, leaving behind only bodies and a message that would echo through Zephyrian military circles for generations. Supreme War Leader Kethvar stared at the empty space where the human ship had been, his 4 hands clenched into fists of pure rage. No enemy had ever dared to appear in his command space, slaughter his warriors, and then escape without consequence. The human had made this personal, and personal affronts demanded personal responses. But as reports arrived from the recovery teams and Warsinger Thraxol provided his account of the engagement, Kethvar began to understand the true scope of the disaster. Marcus Chun had not simply killed 12 warriors. He had demonstrated that individual humans were capable of military feats that violated everything the Zephyrians believed about warfare and honor. The Supreme War Leader's next decision would determine whether this incident remained a personal matter between warriors or escalated into something that could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. #Assassin sent for a Navy SEAL. Part 4. The Zephyrian War Council convened an emergency session aboard the flagship Vengeance of Thraxar, its ancient chambers filled with the most powerful military leaders in the Empire. Supreme War Leader Kethvar stood before a semicircle of his peers, each one representing centuries of military tradition and conquest. The holographic display behind him showed tactical recordings of Marcus Chin's assault on their warriors, playing the footage in slow motion to capture every detail of the human's technique. Warsinger Thraxol had been placed in a medical pod to accelerate his recovery from the paralytic drugs, but his testimony had already been recorded and distributed to every member of the council. His account painted a picture of human warfare that challenged everything the Zephyrians believed about combat effectiveness and tactical doctrine. 12 professional killers had been eliminated by a single opponent who seemed to anticipate their every move. This human fights without honor, declared war champion Vextal, her forearms gesturing dismissively at the recordings. He uses traps, ambush tactics, and cowardly technology instead of facing his enemies in honest battle. Such methods prove that his species lacks true warrior spirit. High strategist Morkan disagreed. His analytical mind focused on the tactical implications rather than questions of honor. The human's methods may be unorthodox, but their effectiveness cannot be disputed. He neutralized our forces with minimal resources while suffering zero casualties. This suggests a level of individual capability that exceeds our current threat assessments. The debate continued for hours as various council members attempted to rationalize what they had witnessed. Some argued that Marcus Chun was an exceptional individual whose abilities did not represent typical human capabilities. Others suggested that the mission had been compromised by intelligence leaks or equipment failures. None wanted to acknowledge the possibility that their fundamental understanding of human military potential was dangerously incomplete. Supreme War Leader Kethvar listened to the discussions with growing frustration, knowing that his own reputation depended on how he responded to this unprecedented challenge. The Zephyrian military had built its doctrine around the assumption that individual warriors, no matter how skilled, could not overcome properly organized groups of professional soldiers. Marcus Chun had shattered that assumption with brutal efficiency. The question before us is not whether this human fights with honor, Kethvar finally said, silencing the debate with his authority. The question is whether we allow his insult to go unanswered. 12 of our finest warriors lie dead, and their killer has escaped to mock us from the safety of human space. This cannot stand. War champion Vextal pounded her primary fist against the council table, her skin shifting to the deep crimson of battle fury. Then we launch a full assault on human space and burn their worlds until they surrender this Marcus Chun to face proper judgment. Let them learn the price of harboring criminals who murder Zephyrian warriors. High strategist Morkan's skin tone shifted to the cool blue of analytical thought as he accessed tactical databases. A direct assault on Earth would violate the Coalition Accords and bring multiple species into conflict against us. The Altarians, Centaurians, and at least 6 other major powers have mutual defense agreements with humanity. We would face a galactic war. The council erupted in heated discussion as various factions argued for different responses. The warrior caste demanded immediate military action to restore their honor, while the strategist caste warned of the political consequences of open warfare. The priest caste invoked ancient laws about blood debt and ritual combat, suggesting that the matter could be resolved through traditional channels. Meanwhile, Marcus Chun was already implementing the next phase of his own plan. The freighter had delivered him to a neutral trading station in the Vega system, where he transferred to a faster courier ship capable of reaching Earth within 36 hours. He carried with him detailed intelligence about Zephyrian fleet positions, command structures, and tactical capabilities, information that would prove invaluable to human military planners. Admiral Sarah Mitchell, commanding officer of Earth's Stellar Defense Force, received Marcus in her private office aboard the orbital command station. She had served alongside him during the early days of humanity's expansion into space and knew his capabilities better than most. The intelligence briefing he provided painted a troubling picture of Zephyrian military intentions. They won't let this go, Marcus warned, reviewing star charts that showed Zephyrian fleet movements near human space. Their entire culture is built around concepts of honor and revenge. I humiliated them publicly, and they have to respond or lose face with their own people. Admiral Mitchell studied the tactical data with professional interest, noting the deployment patterns that suggested preparation for major military operations. The question is whether they'll come after you specifically or escalate this into something larger. Either way, we need to be ready. The Zephyrian War Council finally reached a decision after 14 hours of debate and political maneuvering. Supreme War Leader Kethvar would be permitted to pursue a limited response focused specifically on Marcus Chun, but any expansion of hostilities would require approval from the civilian government. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but avoided the immediate risk of galactic war. Kethvar selected 18 of his most elite warriors for the new mission, personally choosing individuals with experience fighting human opponents. This time, there would be no underestimation of their target's capabilities, no assumptions about human weakness or cowardice. The mission would be planned and executed with the same precision normally reserved for attacking enemy capital ships. The Supreme War Leader also authorized the use of advanced technology normally restricted to fleet-level operations. Cloaking devices, orbital bombardment capability, and experimental weapons that violated several galactic treaties all would be brought to bear against a single human target. If Marcus Chun wanted to play warfare by unconventional rules, the Zephyrians were prepared to demonstrate what their species could accomplish when honor took precedence over restraint. But Marcus was not waiting passively for the next attack. He had spent the journey back to Earth developing a comprehensive plan that would either end the Zephyrian threat permanently or escalate the conflict to a level where humanity's full military potential could be brought to bear. The choice would ultimately depend on how Supreme War Leader Kethvar responded to the message that had been delivered along with his dead warriors. Earth's intelligence networks detected the Zephyrian fleet's movement toward human space within hours of their departure from Kepler. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Defensive systems that had been dormant since the end of the last galactic conflict came online, revealing the true extent of humanity's military preparation. The peaceful facade that Earth presented to the galaxy concealed weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Admiral Mitchell contacted Marcus at his temporary safe house, a heavily fortified facility that had been constructed specifically for protecting high-value personnel. They're coming with a full battle group this time. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, and what our sensors identify as a prototype assault ship. This isn't just about revenge anymore, Marcus. They're treating you like a strategic threat. Marcus smiled grimly as he reviewed the intelligence reports, noting the composition and capabilities of the approaching fleet. Maybe because I am one. The Zephyrians have built their entire military doctrine around the assumption that humans fight like civilized beings. Time to show them what happens when we stop being polite. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not only Marcus Chen's fate, but the future relationship between humanity and one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. The Zephyrians were coming for revenge, but they were about to discover that some humans were perfectly willing to give them a war instead. #Assassin sent for a Navy SEAL. Part 5 Supreme War Leader Kethvar's fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system with weapons charged and shields at maximum power. The prototype assault ship Blood of Ancestors led the formation, its hull bristling with experimental weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. 18 elite warriors occupied specially modified drop pods, each one equipped with enough firepower to level a city block. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Defense platforms that had appeared to be simple communication satellites revealed themselves as heavily armed weapons platforms, their targeting systems locking onto the Zephyrian fleet before the aliens could fully orient themselves. Warning broadcasts in multiple languages demanded immediate withdrawal from restricted space, but Kethvar had not traveled across the galaxy to be deterred by human bluster. "This is Supreme War Leader Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We have come to collect the criminal Marcus Chun for trial and execution. Surrender him immediately or face the consequences of harboring a murderer." The response came not from Earth's government, but from Marcus himself, his transmission originating from coordinates that placed him on Luna, humanity's heavily fortified moon base. "Hello again, Kethvar. I see you brought more friends this time. I hope they're better than the last batch." Admiral Mitchell watched the confrontation unfold from her command center, surrounded by tactical displays that showed the relative positions and capabilities of both fleets. The Zephyrian force was formidable, but they had made a critical error by entering the Sol system, where humanity's defensive advantages were absolute. Earth's military had spent decades preparing for exactly this type of incursion. "All stations, this is Admiral Mitchell," she announced across the fleet communication network. "We have hostile forces in Sol system space threatening a human citizen. All defensive platforms are authorized to engage at will if the Zephyrians make any aggressive moves." Kethvar's tactical officers were providing increasingly urgent reports about the number and sophistication of human defensive systems. What they had expected to be a quick raid against a lightly defended world was revealing itself as a potential death trap. Hundreds of weapon platforms, previously invisible to their sensors, now painted targeting locks on every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. Supreme War Leader reported as chief strategist, human defensive capabilities exceed our intelligence estimates by a factor of 10. They have enough firepower in this system to destroy our entire fleet several times over. Marcus appeared on the main communication screen, his image transmitted from Luna's command bunker. Behind him, human military personnel could be seen preparing what appeared to be massive orbital weapons for firing. I have a proposal for you, Kethvar. Single combat, winner takes all. You win, and I surrender myself for whatever justice you think I deserve. I win, and your fleet withdraws from human space permanently. The proposal sent shock waves through the Zephyrian War Council, as single combat was one of their most sacred traditions. To refuse such a challenge would brand Kethvar as a coward in the eyes of his own people, while accepting it meant risking his life against a human who had already demonstrated impossible combat capabilities. Either choice carried potentially catastrophic consequences for his career and reputation. War champion Vextal urged acceptance of the challenge, arguing that Zephyrian honor demanded personal combat when offered by an enemy warrior. High strategist Morkan counseled caution, pointing out that Marcus Chun had already violated every conventional understanding of human combat effectiveness. The debate raged through the fleet's communication networks while Earth's defensive systems maintained their targeting locks. I accept your challenge, Kethvar finally announced, his pride overruling his tactical judgment. Single combat between warriors, observed by both fleets. Were your proposed terms and conditions? Marcus smiled, knowing that Zephyrian psychology made the challenge impossible to refuse. Neutral ground, that asteroid field between Jupiter and Mars. Personal weapons only, no armor enhancement beyond what we can carry. Combat continues until one of us yields or dies. The asteroid field had been chosen specifically because it negated most technological advantages while favoring the kind of environmental awareness and improvisation that made human soldiers legendary. Kethvar would have to rely on his natural abilities and training rather than the sophisticated equipment that normally gave Zephyrian warriors their edge in combat. Both fleets moved to the designated area under a temporary ceasefire, their crews preparing for what would either be a historic moment of single combat or the opening engagement of a much larger war. Marcus transferred from Luna to a small courier ship, while Kethvar selected his personal weapons and armor for what might be his final battle. The asteroid chosen for their duel was a tumbling rock roughly 2 kilometers in diameter, its surface pocked with craters and crevices that would provide ample opportunity for tactical maneuvering. Both warriors were transported to opposite ends of the asteroid and given 30 minutes to prepare before combat would begin. Kethvar carried traditional Zephyrian weapons, a plasma rifle, energy sword, and ceremonial daggers forged from metals found only on his homeworld. His armor was a masterpiece of alien engineering, providing protection against most known weapons while enhancing his natural strength and coordination. He had fought in dozens of single combats and never been defeated by any opponent. Marcus had chosen simpler equipment, a modified assault rifle, combat knife, and a suit of human-manufactured armor that prioritized mobility over protection. His weapons were crude by Galactic standards, but perfectly suited to his fighting style and the environmental conditions they would face. More importantly, he had spent the past week studying every available recording of Zephyrian combat techniques. The battle began at precisely 1300 hours ship time, with both warriors advancing toward the asteroid center where artificial gravity generators created a small zone of normal environmental conditions. Kethvar moved with the fluid grace of his species, using his 4 arms to maintain perfect balance while scanning for his opponent through the rocky terrain. Marcus approached from an unexpected vector, using the asteroid's rotation to mask his movement while positioning himself for an ambush attack. The first shots came from impossible angles, ricochet rounds that bounced off asteroid surfaces before striking Kethvar's armor with precisely calculated force. The Zephyrian warrior realized immediately that his opponent was using the environment as a weapon. The Supreme War Leader responded with overwhelming firepower, his plasma rifle carving molten channels through the asteroid's surface as he attempted to flush Marcus from cover. But the human had already moved, appearing from a different position to fire another series of ricochet shots that found weak points in Zephyrian armor design. For 2 hours, the battle raged across the asteroid's surface, with each warrior demonstrating the pinnacle of their respective species' military capability. Kethvar's superior strength and coordination were countered by Marcus's environmental awareness and tactical creativity. Neither could gain a decisive advantage through conventional means. The end came suddenly, when Marcus triggered a controlled avalanche that buried both combatants under tons of asteroid debris. Kethvar's armor protected him from the crushing weight, but the impact had damaged his primary weapon and disoriented his targeting systems. He emerged from the rubble to find Marcus waiting with a knife at his throat. "Yield," Marcus said quietly, the blade pressed against the vulnerable point where Zephyrian neck armor joined their helmet seals. "You fought with honor, but this war ends now." Kethvar looked into the human's eyes and saw something that made his blood run cold. Not hatred or anger, but the calm certainty of someone who had already calculated every possible outcome. Marcus Chun was not just a skilled warrior. He was a strategic thinker who had planned this entire confrontation from the moment the first assassins entered his property. "I yield," Kethvar said, his voice carrying across the communication networks to both fleets. The human warrior has proven his superiority in honorable combat. The Zephyrian fleet withdrew from Sol System that same day, carrying with them a new understanding of human military capability that would reshape their strategic planning for generations. Marcus Chun returned to his cabin in the mountains, but this time his retirement was guaranteed by a treaty that made him untouchable to any alien power. Admiral Mitchell's after-action report became required reading at every military academy in human space, not for its tactical details, but for its demonstration of how individual initiative could prevent galactic wars. Marcus had turned a simple assassination attempt into a strategic victory that enhanced humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. But the most important outcome was not political or military. It was the message that echoed through alien military circles whenever humans were mentioned in strategic planning. Earth's warriors did not simply fight to win battles. They fought to ensure that their enemies would never want to fight them again. In a galaxy full of predators, humanity had proven itself to be the apex predator, and Marcus Chun had become the embodiment of everything that made human soldiers so terrifyingly effective. The War Council of the Zephyrian Empire officially classified all human-inhabited systems as inadvisable for military operations, and began restructuring their entire force doctrine around the assumption that individual humans were capable of strategic-level impacts on military campaigns. It was a lesson learned in blood and humiliation, but one that would prevent countless future conflicts between their species. Marcus Chun had wanted nothing more than a peaceful retirement, but the galaxy had forced him to remind everyone why humanity's warriors were feared and respected from one end of space to the other. Sometimes the greatest victories were won not through conquest, but through the demonstration that conquest was impossible.